want to welcome Osiris Indriya. He is our marketing lead, and um, he has been working through some family photos and putting together a memorial slideshow, and he wanted to share his process with you today. So welcome, Osiris. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for kicking it off, Angela. You covered the mechanics of it beautifully, as I knew you would. The one who wrote our manual definitely knows how all the pieces work. My mother actually just passed, and the funeral is on Friday. So this is a very real topic for me. This is something that I'm actually putting together, the main memorial slideshow for my mother. And part of the challenge of this, of course, when you're confronted with this, is you have the emotional reality of this. You have all the investments of family and friends all having points of view, all saying, oh, I have this or I have that album. So one of the very first things I did in me processing my grief and processing how this was going for me was to start actually asking people to put photos together as a part of their grieving process in preparation for the funeral. And I went and visited with my sisters, with my father, and they had put together little stacks of printed photos from the past, because of course my mother was in her mid-70s. Most of her photo history were printed photos, were slides. And she was battling cancer the last few years of her life. So we kind of knew this was coming at some point because it was at a stage that wasn't likely to be recovered from. So I had already digitally scanned a bunch of our old slides, but now there were all these printed pictures that were falling into my lap, albums, some of them even scrapbooks that you can't take apart, things like that. So now you have all these different mediums of memories and you want to put them all together in a slideshow, and you don't want to be stressing out and freaking out because you already are dealing with the reality of somebody dear passing. So I've witnessed other people using Mylio for this exact purpose, and I'm really grateful that Mylio has a relationship with Epson, and specifically the Fast Photo Scanner. The Fast Photo 680W, I believe, is the model that we had in the office that I got to come home and use. I'm going to share my screen now. So I have been doing this exact process in Mylio. Are you able to see my Mylio screen?
Yep, it's up.
Great. So I've been putting together all of these images, and as you can already see, you can tell there's a lot of different kinds of images. This was from when she was in hospice just a couple of weeks ago, going back to here she's a teenager taking a bus somewhere. And getting all these together took a lot of scanning. The beauty of the Fast Photo Scanner is it has two main features that I'm really excited about. One of them, first of all, I don't know if you've seen the Fast Photo Scanner, maybe I should just pull it up real quick. It looks like a printer, and what it does is it allows you to top load stacks of anything from about a 3x5 up to a 8x10 into the top. That doesn't cover everything, but it does cover quite a bit of what you might have as prints, especially when I got to some of the older prints. They were a lot bigger, so I ended up using a flatbed scanner for some of the larger images. Here, I almost got it up here. Here we go. This is the one. Are you seeing the screen?
Yep.
Fast Photo. So it has this top load, and you just put stacks of them in and it scans them relatively fast. You can control the DPI. What I learned is you put like stacks together, and you can even do Polaroids, which have that uneven thickness if you orient them sideways. So thousands of printed photos made it through this machine in just a couple of days. And so when my mother passed, I took time off and I just processed a lot of images. And it helped me to see parts of her life I didn't know about because people were passing me images I had never seen. So it was actually a pretty beautiful process for me to get to know my mother. And what Fast Photo does is when it scans, it places everything into a folder. So I was using my MacBook Pro here. You can see there's a Fast Photo folder. So I had Mylio watch the Fast Photo folder that the Fast Photo scanner produces. When you connect it, it says, where's the folder you want to scan to? I just put it in my pictures folder, which was already watched by Mylio. If you want to know what watching is, it's essentially designating a folder on your computer where you have Mylio installed to have Mylio constantly scan it and look for any changes and updates. So that way I don't have to import anything that gets placed in that folder. So as I was scanning images in through the Fast Photo scanner, they were just arriving, and they were arriving in these different batch folders. It already suggested starting with the year in most cases when I knew a year. Some of these books, of course, were not organized by years, but where they were and I knew them, I used that. And it would just automatically scan them in. And then the second great feature about this is it also automatically can do a restore on the images, which does some color correction, some contrast correction. It's not perfect. If I really wanted to be perfect, I could go into editing software and dial these in. But you can see even just from these two images right here, it definitely brings a lot out just with the default settings. I didn't do anything fancy or special to get it to look like that. So that allowed me very quickly to end up with all these now printed photos in digital format ready to produce my slideshow. And what I did is I grouped all of the raw scans and the restored separately so I could go through. And then another thing that made this slideshow very easy, since I've had Mylio for years, is my mother is already tagged in tons and tons of pictures. So this is my mother's face tag container. And so now everything in here is already tagged to her. So there's thousands of images now with her all ready to go. So then I could either go through and do a quick culling where I can go through and star rate, for example, or flag, or however you choose to mark photos. You can use the number keys on a computer, and you can put any kind of a star rating if you want to filter. So there's lots of options for that. Or my favorite way to do it, which I talked about last time I got to do a coffee break with you guys, was to actually just drag these into the clipboard here. This is my favorite part of Mylio. So as I'm going through these photos, I can just advance or look on these timelines and grab things that I like, pull them into here, and just keep collecting. So I was actually doing this earlier today in preparation for this call with you all, going through and looking at them like this. This was the view that I ended up liking the most. So it's already zoomed in on her face. I can kind of get a sense of the quality and type of image. I'm just scrolling through, and if I find something that looks interesting, I can open it up full, and if I like it, I can just pull them in to down here and just keep a collection rolling, and then navigate to an album that I've already created for her slideshow, and then just plop them in. So some of these are already in there, so I'm not going to do it again here. But that's how I ended up with this folder. And what's even better, because I have Mylio on my phone, my dad has been texting me pictures that he missed. Of course, inevitably, he has stuff in his camera roll, and every day I get a handful of 5 or 6. It's very easy for me to take those images that he's giving me in text message and save them into the same album. Now, if I save them directly in here, Mylio is going to want me to know, ask me where to actually place them. because you have to place them in a folder. An album is not a saving destination in Mylio. It's a virtual container. So that's where typically the inbox, if I go up a level here, the inbox is generally where some of these go. So he was texting me this image from a recent wedding they attended. So this is the default location where stuff goes in. So if you're on the fly, again, you've got a lot to process and deal with, and you're taking in files from everywhere. Mylio does a really nice job of having some nice default designated places for you to place things, so then you can plop them where you want them to go. Going back into albums, so it remembers which album I'm in, and I can just plop it in pretty easily. And then, as Angela showed, all of the slideshow, so I can even test it while I'm working, or if I need to take a break and I just want to let it roll because maybe I need a break. You have all your settings here. You can set it to remember the settings, so whatever you did last time will stay with this album indefinitely, and then you can hit play to experience it. So that is mainly what I wanted to cover today. Are there any questions about any of that? Is there anything I went too fast through?
What about the option of exporting a slideshow as a video to share?
I have not actually done that yet.
So if you
What
go
I
ahead and
have done is export there's a different kind of export I'll talk about in a minute. Why don't you walk me through that?
Sure. So if you open up
Brilliant.
the details panel on the side and then get to the export button right there,
There we
and you
go.
can export your slideshow as a video. That's the one.
That's
and
cool.
you have a lot of the same options, but you can even attach a music file that you have on your computer. So if you have an MP4 with music, you can attach that, and then you can save this to, you know, your personal account on YouTube or wherever you like to put your videos, Facebook, anything else, and share the slideshow with family and friends. So it's a good way to get those things out.
Yes. Or the way that I plan to do it at the event, instead of producing the video, is to actually have Mylio running on a computer connected to a screen on a table. So because what I imagine is going to happen is, while I'm there, some people are going to show up and say, oh, I have these pictures on my phone from last summer when I was with her. And then I can literally just plop them into the album and update the slideshow while we're there. So that's my plan, is to make it more dynamic and allow people to feel more included, because there's no way I got everything that's going to be delivered to me.
I love that concept of being able to update the slideshow on the fly like that.
And then I do plan to share these photos with people after the fact. So there's a few different ways of doing that that I wanted to mention here today. One kind of, if you want to share everything, if you want to share all the metadata, all your ratings, all your Mylio edits, because there are some photos in here, for example, let's say that I put a little bit of a crop on this one to get closer to the faces. Now, this is not in the files. If I just exported, or if I just found, if I put these all in a folder, or even I exported them as files, that sort of forces everyone into my edits. If I want to give someone else the ability to re-edit this potentially in the future, there are some ways of doing this where, instead of making my edits here, I actually created a separate user on my Mac and a separate instance of Mylio where I'm finalizing this. So right now what I'm doing is I'm collecting. And then when I do the sort of final polish run, I'm actually going to use a separate Mylio account on a separate user on my computer. And then that is one that is actually my dad's user. I created an account for him. So that way on his phone, the finished slideshow shows up in Mylio, and he can actually make edits to it himself. and be able to have some control over the slideshow that's showing at the funeral. So that's actually something I'm working on tomorrow because I don't have a lot of time left. So today was the collecting day. Tomorrow is the syncing it up with his phone, and then he can make whatever adjustments and changes right from his phone. That'll all come right back to me on my computer, and then I can make either the final export, or I can just use that user when I play the slideshow live at the funeral to add to it.
That's awesome.
The last piece got away from me there a little bit.
Yeah.
I got the creating a second account.
Mhm.
Obviously, we need a second account with Mylio for that, with the other name on it. But how does his changes come back to your Mylio?
They don't come back to my Mylio. They come, so on my computer, I have my main user, which has my Mylio login. That's what
Got
we're
it.
looking at right now. If
Okay.
I can't do that because I'm on Zoom, but if I logged in on my other user with fast user
I get
switching
it.
on a Mac,
I get it.
that user on my computer is logged into my dad's account.
I got it.
So I can export this and get all the original file size. And before I do any edits, move it over there, do all of that stuff in that account, which is his account. So that way he's able to immediately view and see it. So essentially what I've done is I've moved everything into his account. And my dad does not have large storage devices or anything. He's only got a phone and an iPad connected to this account. So I'm still the main storer. I'm the one
got
who
it.
has the hard drives where the originals live. But because of the way Mylio works with optimized smart previews, he can edit, he can even comment, add stories into the caption fields, add keywords, whatever he wants to do. To point things out, or even remove things. I don't want this in this slideshow, and that doesn't affect my Mylio because I am an archivist. I want everything in its raw original form, unchanged. I don't want him to
Yeah.
accidentally mess with it. But in his instance, he can do whatever he wants. It's his, because I've now passed those files into his account. So that's
Got
a
it.
tricky way to use Mylio with multiple accounts, is to use different users on your computer. There's another way to do it on Windows that I'm less familiar with. But that is the easiest way for especially a Mac user. I know the separate user method also works on Windows.
There are instructions in the manual. It's not a recommended thing to do, but they are there, so you can mess with that if you want to. There are things that we're working on to make sharing easier. I would expect to see those sometime next year. But for now, Osiris lined out a great workaround. All right, any other questions?
And then the plan is take that finished version that my dad has had a say on and make that the one that we share smaller versions of with other family members if they want the slideshow. But again, mine has the everything, the unfiltered everything for the future, because I'm thinking more of a legacy for the long term versus my dad just prefers to have whatever fits on his phone that he can enjoy today. And he doesn't want the extra unrestored images and things like that.
That makes sense. Make those slideshows, celebrate the people you love, and enjoy the photos. That's what they're there for. And that's what Mylio is meant to do, is help you keep your memories accessible and available. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you, Osiris, again for presenting. And I want to wish everybody a wonderful day.